There I am. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Aquarium Online Academy. My name is James. I work in our education department here at the Aquarium of the Pacific down in Long Beach. We have new friends joining us in the studio today. We're so happy that we have them back in the office. We have Cynthia helping out. She's learning how to do stuff. Sarah, who you've probably heard us talk about a lot, she's here learning how to do stuff today, too. So we will get to see new faces on our online academy throughout the summer and for programming that we're going to have in the future. But today we're going to talk about some really fun things. My favorite group of animals, the whales. As the aquarium's resident whale and dolphin expert, we are going to talk about a lot of cool things today. Jen is on the controls. She's going to show us what's going on behind me here. But again, like every time, you get to participate in our online academy. So we're going to have the text number put up on the right there, 562-286-1838. You, those that are watching live, can text questions in, and Dana's going to help answer some of those or bring them into the studio so that I can see them and we can answer them live on the air. If you're not watching live, there's an email down there too where you can email us questions at live@lbaop.org. Now, if we get so many questions, because I hear is it a first or second grade class that's watching too? A big first grade group is watching us today too. If we can't... About what?
Their mascot is the gray whales and the dolphins.
Your mascot is gray whales and dolphins? Perfect. I love it. If we can't get to all of your questions on the air, don't fret. We'll answer as many as we can on the air, but we'll also be able to answer some from the email too. So if you're not watching live, go ahead and email us some questions. Now, I think my parents are actually watching too. They're out in Colorado where there are no whales, where I grew up. So how do we get into talking about whales? Well, I love the ocean so much, the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, all the oceans. And I love the animals within, but I really found passion talking about whales. So let's get into talking about whales. What makes a whale, though? Let's have Jen put up a picture of a whale, and let's see if we can figure out what makes a whale a whale. If we recognize what a whale is, how do we know that it's that thing? What observations are we making? Let's use our eyes and our brains, and let's start thinking about what makes a whale a whale. Now, this might not be the same kind of image you've seen before. This one's a little more telltale of what we might have seen from whales. We'll go back to the one with its mouth open in a minute. What do we recognize about whales? Some of them have this dorsal fin right here. Some of them have their pectoral flippers right there. What are these for? Are these for flying? No. The whales use them to steer. Now, humpback whales, the reason we can tell it's a humpback is the length of this pectoral flipper is extremely long. In some humpbacks, it's about a third of the total length of the whole body. So if that whale is 50 feet, one pectoral fin could be almost 17 feet long. That's crazy, big, amazing. What else do we recognize about a whale? It's got this tail right here behind where my head would be. So let me switch around. Jen switched early before we thought we were going to. Here, let's talk about the tail. So they have a tail in the back. Is it a tail like a fish, though? Does it go like this? Let's get a fish model to double check. We'll use a pretty famous kind of fish, the clownfish. So clownfish tails do this, right? What do whale tails do? When they're swimming, if they're going this way, the tail that's behind them is going to be going up and down. So they have to move their tail up and down to swim. Now, we're going to show you some footage of whales in just a little bit, too. But let's keep talking about what makes whales whales. They're mammals like us. What characteristics do we have? How do we breathe? We have lungs. Take a big breath. We have lungs. Now, Gage, one of our famous friends who has been following along throughout their trip through the United States, they're on a grand adventure. Are narwhals a type of whale? Narwhals are a whale. They're a different kind than the one behind me here. So whales come in two varieties. We'll get to that in just a sec. What else makes a mammal before we get to our narwhals whales? Well, mammals have to breathe air. We talked about that. They nurse their young. We actually have pictures of some baby whales that we'll show you in a little bit too. So they nurse their young. So mom produces the milk for the baby to eat. They're born live, just like our babies are born live. Your mom didn't lay an egg, right? Right? She didn't lay an egg, sit in it for 9 months? No. You were born live without a shell, without an egg around you. And that's how mammals have babies. So they share all the same characteristics as us. But what makes whales whales is that they have this big tail called a caudal fin or caudal tail. And then they can have all the same characteristics as us, but the groups of whales are divided into the baleen whales like this one. Let's take a look at that baleen this time. This is what's in their mouth. So when whales are feeding, there's two ways they can do it. They're filter feeders, like a humpback whale, a blue whale, a fin whale, or they are grabbing their food with teeth. So if they're a filter feeding whale with baleen, they have to take a big mouthful of water, just like this one is right here. This was a picture taken by one of our photo ID interns here at the Aquarium of the Pacific during our whale watches with Harbor Breeze Cruises. So this is really cool. It's not just in places like Monterey they get to see this stuff. We get to see it here in Long Beach. And their baleen is only on the top jaw. It hangs down, kind of like a brush or like a filter or strainer. This mouthful of water. They squirt the water out their lips. You can actually see it falling and cascading out of their mouth. And then the food gets stuck behind. What kind of food do whales eat? I have an example. Now, humpbacks will eat a combination of fish and this stuff. This is krill. Now, you may not be able to see it right now. So I'm going to turn on our document camera, and as soon as that thing is ready to go, we'll show you what krill looks like under the document camera. They're kind of like little shrimp-like animals, right? So they eat a combination of these two food items. But what do toothed whales eat? So many other things. Toothed whales don't generally eat krill or plankton. They're going to eat the fish, squid, sometimes mammals. So narwhals are toothed whales. And that special horn that looks like is a horn is actually a modified tooth that grows out of their forehead. Now, maybe Dana or Sarah can go grab our narwhal model tooth, and we'll show you just how massive these things can be. But let's take a look at some krill real quick. So krill is a tiny little animal that, here's my hand in comparison. Let's turn the lights down a little bit on our camera. I'm going to zoom in. Not too much zoom because there's a lot of extra bubbles that are in our plastic plate of krill. So krill, some of the bigger species are maybe the size of your pinky finger. All right. Now, my pinky finger might be a little too big, but some of our younger viewers, your little pinky fingers, that's about the size of krill. We can even compare. James's pinky. Now, if you have this really long, oh, there's even the foam casing for it. If you have a really long tusk like this or tooth, it actually doesn't even fit on the screen. It's so long. Maybe diagonal? Nope, not even diagonally. I can't get it all to fit on the screen perfectly. Oh, let's try this. Nope, it doesn't work. Height for me in comparison, I'm 5'7"-ish. Okay, so I'm 5'8" on a tall day. It's a pretty long tooth. Are you going to be eating little tiny things like this with a really long tooth? Well, wait, do narwhals even use this to eat? Is this like stabbing their food with a fork? No. They will kind of sword fight with each other and communicate and interact with each other socially with these tusks. Now, they might smack their food with it, but they aren't going to puncture their food with it. So great question to start off the day from Gage. Now, we also have Sebastian and Paige asking, sorry, there's a narwhal tusk case in front of my question. What do humpbacks eat? That was a great question, Sebastian and Paige. I'm glad we got to answer that for you. Now, they will eat lots of different species of fish. So maybe herring, sardines, maybe mackerel if they can catch up to the mackerel, but they're not eating big fish. They're eating smaller fish that they can trap in their mouth and then swallow. They might even eat little tiny fish that are like, I don't even know what species, but they're really small compared to like a sardine might get 8 or 9 inches long or more. So they might eat some really small, little tiny fish. Jove, another frequent watcher. Thanks for watching, Jove. We love whales. I'm glad your family loves whales. We're already going to be good friends. Why do humpbacks have bumps on the top of their head? Take a look right here. These knobs on the top of their head, these are very special. These are called tubercles. I'm going to set my tusk down so it doesn't fall over. Now, the tubercles are actually hair follicle ends. So a follicle is where hair grows out of your skin. If you zoomed way in on these tubercles, you could see little hairs. Wait, whales have hair? That's another characteristic we share with whales. They have hair, so do we. Now, when they grow up, you can't really see much of the hair anymore. When they're babies, though, right around their nose, their blowhole, because their nose is on the back, they have extra hairs that help tickle mom to let mom know they're hungry. So if the baby comes up underneath and tickles mom's belly, where their mammary gland would be, mom can feed them. So they do have a little bit of hair when they're babies and they grow out of it. But this stuff here, the baleen, is also hair. It's the same protein as our hair and our fingernails. That's really cool. Now, I do have Humpback Baleen. I'm going to put under the camera for you to see. I got to zoom way out so that we can actually see what's going on in the camera. All right, let's switch over to our camera real quick. And let's take a look at the ends of the baleen. So the ends of the baleen almost look like hair, don't they? So here's, again, my finger for comparison. This is actually a pretty large structure. Let's turn the lights down just a little bit more. Now, when you look at the baleen, it splinters off at the ends, kind of like this bristly hair. But if you look at the base of it, it is kind of plasticky. And it even is a little flexible. Now, when it's in the whale's mouth, it is more flexible than it is right now. But baleen, back when people used to hunt whales, baleen was used and salvaged and used much in the way that we use plastic products now. So there are different items. If you ever heard the term whalebone, if it's one word, it's actually baleen. Then I would use it in women's clothing and other products. It acts kind of like plastic does today, where it's a little flexible, it's pretty sturdy, and they would use it and sell it after collecting a whale. The petroleum and plastic industry has pretty much made that not necessary. This is a cross-section. So when we say cross-section, I'm going to grab my fish model for an example. A cross-section is when we cut it like you're cutting a banana or a cucumber, okay? If you're doing a longitudinal section, it's like across the middle. Kind of like if you wanted to cut a hot dog down the long way and open it up and put, I don't know, ketchup in there, whatever you do with hot dogs. That is a different kind of section. So if you cross-section, it's like cutting to look down their mouth. And on our whale model, this is the tongue. This is when their mouth is open and their pleats, their throat pleats are expanded so they can get a lot of water in their mouth. They trap it all and squirt all the water out their lips, and they trap all the food behind the baleen. This stuff, does this shape actually look recognizable? Yeah, it's just like the shape of the baleen on our drawing. So this hangs on the inside. The furry part is towards the tongue. And after they squirt all the water, they swallow all their food down. But how much do they eat? I'm sure that's a pretty good question you have. Oh, they eat a lot. I don't think you'll ever win an eating contest against a whale. The blue whale, the largest of all the whales, can eat up to 8,000 pounds a day during feeding season. That's a lot of food. And blue whales only eat krill. Now, there's a couple of types of blue whales that only eat 2 species of krill. So they're really dependent on those 2 types of krill being alive and very numerous in their habitat in order for them to survive. We have a blue whale feeding video. Great. Let's see what it looks like when a whale is feeding. Because this picture doesn't do it totally justice of what it looks like. Here we go. Let me get out of the way. So you can see the pleats. Oh, that is, I mean, those pleats actually run down a long length of their body, and they can gulp up a lot of water. I think estimates for a blue whale, of a large blue whale, are maybe 17,000 gallons, kind of like a large pool, backyard pool, in one mouthful of water, and then they squirt all that water out. Well, gray whales, like our mascots for the first graders that are watching today, gray whales feed in a little bit different way. They feed off of the mud that's in the ocean. Are they eating mud? Not like earthworms do. What they do is they scoop up the mud because their food is in the mud. It's called amphipods. Little creepy crawly bug-looking things that are in the mud, and then they filter that mud out and squirt the mud and water away, and then their food is stuck inside their mouth. So this is the head of a gray whale. There's the blowholes. Now there's also these things on here. These are called barnacles. So the barnacles will grow on them and not really harm them. Now, in some texts and some materials, my mic has fallen off. In some materials, they might consider barnacles a parasite. They're not truly a parasite because they're not feeding or harming the whale, or feeding off of or harming the whale, unless there's too many of them. So in some cases, when whales are really sick, they get a lot of extra lice, which is not actually a louse, an insect. It's a crustacean like a crab. Little tiny things, and the lice actually eat dead barnacles off. So the lice are good. But the barnacles, if they grow too numerous, then it might hurt a whale. But in general, they're not considered a parasite because they're not truly harming the whale. They just hitch a ride on the whale, and they can feed off of the plankton as the whale swims around. So This is what's called commensalism. It's a type of mutualism or symbiosis where the whale gets no benefit, but the barnacle gets everything. They get a free home, they get a space to gather their food, they get to ride all over the ocean with a whale and feed as they go. All right, we have a couple more questions. We got to the biggest whale ever. That's the blue whale. Now, as far as we can tell in the fossil record, there has not been a larger whale than the blue whale. And in fact, the gigantism of whales seems to be fairly recent in the fossil record, where it started, like the blue whale itself, if you think of their lineage, wasn't as big as it is now. So it probably has gotten bigger in the last, I think, maybe 40,000 years. So they've gotten pretty big recently. How many different types of whales? A lot. There's, I think, about 18 to 20 maybe baleen whales. The number changes every once in a while because two groups might be considered a subspecies. Like there's a subspecies of blue whale. There's the pygmy blue whale, which in terms, pygmy means the smaller version of. Like pygmy goat is a really tiny goat. A pygmy blue whale is a tiny blue whale, but not like tiny. It's still like 60 feet long. So I don't feel like it's tiny, but compared to a 100-foot long whale, that's not that big. So they have some subspecies that we rename or reclassify or describe. And in other cases, they're like, nope, these are the same animal. And so we take one off the list because they're actually the same thing, which is really interesting. There's been recently described new subtypes of fin whales. There was a new whale species entirely discovered in the last few years. So the number does fluctuate a little bit, which is why it's hard to give you an exact number. In terms of toothed whales, there's over 70 types of toothed whales, which includes our smallest of the toothed whales, the vaquita. Now, the vaquita lives pretty close to Los Angeles. I think it's like 200 miles that way. And this is a picture of them. Now, they're not any bigger than I am. In fact, I would be bigger than most vaquita. So they're about 4 feet, maybe 5 feet long at the most. And they're the most endangered, too. They're the smallest, but also the most endangered cetacean. Cetacean includes all types of whales and dolphins. And porpoises. This is actually a porpoise. So the smallest of all the whales is a porpoise. And this is actually a picture of one that they collected, and they were doing, I think, a health check on it. They collected some samples from it. I don't think this is one of the ones they attempted to put into human care, or if it was, they released it. It was the first one that they were able to release. And the reason they want to study them is because there's not very many left. Some of the lowest estimates are maybe six vaquita. And they only live in one place, the Sea of Cortez, which is in the Gulf of California. This is just the rapid decline that happened with vaquita. And the reason is not because people are trying to catch them. They're trying to catch other things that live in the same space as vaquita, and they're getting caught in the nets. Mateo is asking, how deep can whales go? Great question, Mateo. There are two whales that are not technically competing, but competing for the deepest diving animals. One is the sperm whale. Now, we do have a picture sort of sperm whales. We have a picture of them from the surface. We don't have anything under the water from them, unfortunately. But sperm whales can go very deep. Their bodies seem to be perfectly adapted for diving 6,000 feet in the water. That's over a mile. They can dive deeper than military submarines. Military submarines are only going maybe 1,000 feet, I think. They're not going very far down. Whales are getting over a mile into the water. Now, them plus another type of whale called a beaked whale, Cuvier's beaked whale, has been also monitored to dive over a mile. Well, how do we know they got down there? Also a good question. We will put these monitors on them. They're little, well, they're not that little. They're probably about the size of a dinner plate. GPS depth reader, and what they do is they're on like a floppy pole with a big set of suction cups on them, and we smack one onto the whale, which would be kind of like if you just get a pat on the back from your friend. We're not hurting the whale. We just stick this thing on them, and then as they dive and swim around, we can even get a 3D model of where they're moving. So just like our phones and our watches might give us a GPS lineup of where we run and walk around, here's a sperm whale. I'm going to just step off because the camera moves around. The whales get a little moving around. It has a very tiny dorsal fin compared to other whales where it's just kind of this big curve. And then here we're going to get to see it fluke, which is when it sticks its tail up out of the water. The beaked whales will dive pretty deep for their food, and when those suction cup tags pop off, because they'll eventually just pop off, they're not glued on, they're not stuck into the skin. They float up to the surface, and then a GPS tracker pops open, and it will tell the researchers where to go pick it up so they can download the data. But also, some of them are uploading to a satellite. Oh, it didn't really stick its tail up out of the water. Oh, here we go. Now, I call these the ocean's hot dogs because this front half just looks like a hot dog. Here we go. Here's the fluke. This is the best part. Ah, this is what we love to see when we're out whale watching, is when the tail comes up out of the water. It's literally the best part. Here's the fluke of a blue whale. Different whales have different shaped flukes. Some are very curved, some are very just wide and triangular. That sperm whales is just kind of a very strong V triangle, whereas a blue whales is a really wide triangle. All right, Lucy's asking, how do whales sleep? Well, if you have to breathe air but live in the water, what would you do to sleep? Are you like a seal or a sea lion where you haul out on land and sleep? Whales can't do that. It's not really easy to get back in the water. So what they do is they kind of go on what's like autopilot, kind of like sleepwalking for us. But what they're doing is they're shutting down part of their brain that they can still swim and move around, or maybe they just kind of float there. We call it logging. They just look like a log in the water. And they just kind of float there and they'll surface to get a couple breaths. Because the interesting thing about whales is that they don't breathe like we do. They do breathe air. We don't have to think about breathing. You're not sitting there as you're watching our online academy right now going, inhale, exhale, inhale. You're not thinking about how to breathe, whereas whales do. Whales have to choose to take a breath. It's not involuntary. So when we breathe, it's involuntary, which is why it's really hard to try and hold your breath, because your body does not want to do that. You have to train yourself to not breathe if you're going to try and hold your breath for a really long time. But whales, that's in their body already. Their brain stem doesn't control it that way. It's not involuntary. So that way they don't accidentally try to breathe while they're under the water. So when they're sleeping, some sperm whales, we've seen that they actually will sleep vertically, and they can hold their breath a very long time. So they'll sleep in smaller amounts of time than we do. So they're not going to try and sleep for 8 hours overnight like we do. They will sleep in smaller segments throughout the day, kind of like taking cat naps all day long. All right, Loki asked, what do orcas eat? So they were talking. I thought they were talking to me. That's okay. Dana and Sarah are working on questions. Loki, great question about orcas and what they eat, because that's a lot of things. The reason they're called killer whales is because scientists, before they really studied them and researched them as much as they have now, they just thought they ate everything. And they are the great killer of the ocean. They eat everything. Turns out that's not true. Orcas are very specific about what they eat. It's called matrilines, where the mom teaches the babies and grandbabies how to hunt. So you can tell a male from a female by fin shape. So this big triangle right here, this big fin tells me that's a male. The females have the smaller curved fins, like this. Now this might be a large female or a small male. I can't quite tell in that picture. But the males have the really big fin, and then the females have a little smaller fin. The males are bigger than the females, but the females are in charge. It's a matriarchal family unit. So the mom or grandma, the oldest female, is in charge. That one teaches everybody else what to hunt. So if mom only knows how to hunt sharks and rays, that's all the whole family is going to learn how to hunt, is sharks and rays. And it turns out they have separated themselves into what we call ecotypes. Now, some research is pointing to maybe those ecotypes, those different matrilines or feeding styles, should actually be separate species. So the toothed whale number is going to get even bigger, potentially, in the future. And they're so separated because they really don't intermingle and have babies with each other if you're an offshore killer whale, one that only eats sharks and rays, or if you're a transient killer whale, one that only eats mammals like seals, sea lions, and gray whales. So they aren't really intermixing and hanging out in order to breed, but there are some males that trade between pods, but usually pods have the same style or same ecotype. So potentially in the future, we could have 8 or more different species of orca. That would be really interesting if they got so diverse over time from not having babies with each other that would change our understanding of whales. Great question, Loki. Sophia's asking, how long can whales hold their breath? Well, we told you the longest ones, Cuvier's beaked whale and sperm whale. They're holding their breath an hour to 2 hours. In general, it's not very long. So dolphins like orca, bottlenose, common dolphins, spinner dolphins, this is a bottlenose picture. They're only holding their breath for a few minutes. They're in the water or they'll dive in the water to kind of hunt the fish, but they're not going to stay underwater for long periods. Their food is mostly at the surface. Whereas other whales might dive for 3 to 8 minutes on average, like a humpback or a gray whale might only dive for a few minutes. But blue whales and fin whales, maybe 15 to 30 minutes at most. So they're diving a little bit longer than some the toothed whales. How many babies do whales have in their lifetime? Well, most of the big whales and some of the dolphins too, they really only have babies every every 2 to 3 years. So the gestation, or how long mom is pregnant, is going to be, on most whales, 11 to 13 months. And it's a rule for everybody. For almost all whales, it's around 11 to 13 months. You'd think the dolphins have a shorter timeline than the whales, like an elephant can be pregnant for up to 2 years. It's a long time. A whale is almost the same amount of time to be pregnant as us. Just a little bit longer than people. And they're born really big. A blue whale baby is born at maybe 6,000 pounds, 20 feet long. That's a big baby. And that baby's got to eat a lot. So those baby whales are going to feed off of the milk from mom, which is about the consistency of cottage cheese or yogurt in the water. And it's a lot of fat content. It's about 50-60% fat. And it's so that they can put on weight, because they're not born with a lot of blubber. And then they have to grow real fast. The blue whale is the fastest growing organism. It can gain almost 200 pounds a day. That's a lot. Think of it this way. If you ever had like a gallon jug of water or milk, that's about 8 pounds, right? Imagine carrying an extra one of those every hour. You have to hold on to every one you've picked up so far. And every hour, you pick up another jug of water or milk. 8 pounds an hour. That's a lot of weight per day. That's how whales grow. Now, other species like humpbacks, gray whales, fin whales, they're not gaining quite as much weight per hour. The blue whale, because of its sheer size, does grow very fast. But other whales grow pretty big too. Within 6 months, 6 to 8 months, most whales are weaning or not eating with mom, not nursing the milk from mom, but eating on their own. They're at a size that they can start leaving mom's side and go hunting on their own. So if you're a humpback whale, you might be 30 plus feet long within 6 months. If you're a blue whale, you're probably 60 foot, maybe within that 6 month time frame, and you can go hunt on your own. So whales grow very fast for as large as they do start out, but as short as it seems their gestation is too. So the babies in mom, when they're a fetus, are growing very quickly too. But it's the same thing for dolphins. Dolphins are, I don't know, 6 to 14 feet long, depending on the type of dolphin. Unless, if we include the orcas, then it's up to 30 feet. But they grow in about 11 to 13 months too, before they're born. They are growing a little bit slower. But they also stay together as a family unit, whereas the big whales, the baleen whales, they will disperse. They are more solitary. So that's one of the other things that are different between baleen whales and toothed whales. Toothed whales will stay often in family units, whereas baleen whales, they are pretty much solitary. And that's just their socialization, what they do. That's normal for them. All right, I don't think we had any more questions roll in. Let's watch a couple quick videos, though, because we were going to say, we said we were going to get to those. Let's watch a baby whale. We talked about baby whales. Let's watch the baby whales. Baby whales are so cute. I love the whales. And what we're going to see is how mom is teaching the whale to surface and breathe. This is really important. Remember, we said that they are not involuntary breathers. They have to force themselves to breathe. So here's a humpback with the baby. Now, this is a big baby, so this one's a little bit older. But the mom has to teach the baby how to be a whale. And the humpback whales, they get around 45 to 55 feet long. I love the humpback whales. They're kind of the iconic whale most people would think of. But for me, for what we study here in our Pacific Ocean, I think of more like the blue whale and the gray whale. But we do see humpbacks a lot. Now we have another video of a baby with I think those are the bowheads. Oh no, it was the northern right whale baby that we had a video of that we can show mom surfacing the baby. So what happens with gray whales that we see a lot in Gulf of California and with other species is that once the baby's born, mom has to kind of pick them up and hold them up at the surface so they can get their first breath of air. And if they don't kind of piggyback on mom and get up there, they can't really breathe that much. And in some cases, the baby gets kind of tired. And, when our nieces, nephews, and children get tired, they want to get carried. The babies get a little tired, and mom helps them surface to breathe too. And researchers and the general populace has seen this when they're out with the baby whales. In the lagoons of Mexico, they've seen this with the gray whales, where the mom will kind of lean and pick the baby up so that even the people can see the baby. They're very proud mothers. And that's kind of an interesting behavior that we've monitored from whales, is that they learn a little bit about us. They realize we're not fish, and we're not whales either, but if we're also not there to harm them, they pretty much don't mind us being there, and they'll come investigate and be curious too. I've actually been stared at by a humpback whale before. It was a younger one that just kind of looked up at us while we were on the boat. Well, you're an interesting thing. and eventually just kind of left. It was just meandering around. So whales are pretty smart and pretty curious animals. Jen's looking for the video. Don't worry if we. It's actually a NOAA video that we can show off. So if you would like to look for it too, there are some NOAA videos of whales that you can check out, and it's on NOAA's website, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and they have a lot of research that they have on animals and a lot of information that we can share about them too. Well, oh, Jen found it. All right, cool. Because otherwise we were going to be out of time, and I was going to stop. But hey, we're going to watch babies. These are right whales. They have little barnacle spots on their body too. Now, unlike some of the other whales we saw pictures of, they don't have a dorsal fin. So there's a few baleen whales that do not have dorsal fin. Here's the baby! Now, they have a very iconic shape of their fluke, their tail also. And you can see just the big size difference between mom and baby too. So this one's probably very young. The coloration tells you it's also a little bit younger compared to mom. Mom's a lot darker than the baby is. And the northern right whales and southern right whales are both hunted extensively because their sheer volume, they're very large round whales. They have a lot of blubber on their body, and the blubber was one of the main products that people were hunting them for. Now, they would use the whale meat, but the blubber was used to make lubricants and lamp oil and a lot of different things. So they'd use the fat to create different oil products. The southern right whale has done much better at recovery, at increasing their population size compared to, see here, NOAA Fisheries, you can check them out. We all want to make sure that they get credit because they have those videos. So NOAA Fisheries, you can check out their videos. The bigger whales with the bigger blubber were hunted more extensively, but southern right whales have recovered better. Northern right whales are still very much endangered. In fact, even though we're in the range where southern right whale or northern right whales should be, we haven't really seen them much more than a few times on our coastline in the last 10 years. So they really only are in the farther northern regions like Canada and Alaska, and their population is very small. So on the Atlantic side, it's also a small population. I don't think it's as small as the Pacific side, but we're learning more about their population and how many. Here's mom trying to hold the baby up. Now, they don't have arms, so it doesn't always work perfectly. So don't worry. This is not anything that's mean or hurtful. Mom's trying to help baby get up to the water surface. They don't have arms, so it's not like they can do like the kind of thing, Pride Rock. They will help the baby get to the surface, help them learn how to get themselves up there and breathe. See, there we go. Oh, there's the breath. Hey! So they are very strong mothers, very concerned mothers, and they will take very good care of their babies. So much so that they will protect their babies from potential predators. That might have been a question somebody asked. It's not in our studio here, but what eats other whales? Most of the big whales, when they're adults, not much eats them. But mammal-eating whales, like orca, will try to hunt baby whales. But otherwise, it's maybe the largest of sharks. But otherwise, there's not a lot of predators for the big whales. And that's kind of an advantage of being a big, big animal. It's not too many things try to eat you. Now, there's some dolphins actually playing with a baby whale. Other species are very social with each other. We've witnessed what we call like a escort pod of dolphins that hang out with baby whales and mom together as they're both kind of swimming along. The dolphin pod will kind of escort and hang out and play with them. So this shows a pretty strong intelligence and also cohesion between them. They will live very easily with each other, dolphins and large whales. So we are over time, but we got so excited talking about baby whales. I really appreciate everybody tuning in and texting us questions today. Now, if you're not watching live, this is our Wednesday 9 a.m. program. You can still email us at live@lbaop.org, and we'll have our education help answer some of those questions. Well, we have a lot more fun going on today. Unfortunately, we won't be able to air for our 1 and 2 p.m. programs. I think those will have to be off the air for some technological reasons. So we'll only have classes at 9, 10, and 11 Pacific Standard Time. So you can tune in again on Thursday and Friday this week, and we'll have some more programming next week for you all to learn from and have some fun. And to our first-time viewers, welcome. Thank you. We love having our viewers join us. For our longtime viewers, keep going. We love your questions. We really appreciate all the support you give us. Have a good day, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your